Hello and welcome everyone to the Tech Sharmit podcast. Today I am here with another special guest, Donna Hudi. Donna is a distinguished leader in the IBM Z and LinuxONE technology space with a career that spans remarkable achievement and contribution to the tech industry. As an IBM champion, she offers unique insight to the modernization and real-world application of mainframe technology. Donna's commitment to open source project and her strategic expertise makes her a leading voice in this tech industry. So in this episode, we will discuss about her experiences and will try to learn something from her experiences. But just before that, I'd like to thank Donna for joining us today. And now I request you to please initiate the discussion by telling us something about yourself.
Thank you, Amit. I really appreciate being invited here. Most people who have interacted with me know a little bit about my past. I started a few decades ago as a developer myself in the distributed world, in the financial industry in Chicago. Fell into it accidentally, got involved in an IT project. I was more business side, admin operations for a financial firm, and they asked me to get involved in an IT project, and it turns out I loved it. And I seem to have a knack for it. So I set about the task of teaching myself how to code. Um, I did that, and I jumped into the field of IT, and I spent many years doing that again on the distributed side within the financial industry in Chicago. However, about 10 years ago, I decided it was time for a change. And I ended up in the position of executive director for the Share organization. And to be honest with you, I didn't know that that whole world existed when I crossed over from being a developer into the world of nonprofit. Nor did I realize how close I was to the mainframe during the entire previous career. I was on the what they call the buy side of the street in when you're talking about the financial industry. So investment management firms, that's what I worked for. Mainframes are not really employed on the investment management side. They're employed on the broker dealer side and the banking side. But I dealt with traders, equity and stock and bond traders. And so I was constantly dealing with the banks and the broker dealers on the other side. Anytime my traders wanted to execute orders electronically, they had to go over to that side of the street. And so when I got to Share and I started looking at the organizations that were members of Share, I was like, wow, I know these people. Like I know these firms, but then also if you drill down into it and you see the people that were members of Share, there were like people there that I had been dealing with for a very long time that I had no idea they were mainframers and that they, I was that close.
Okay.
So it was very exciting. And then about 5.5 years ago, I left Share and I came to Phoenix Software International. And there I'm the chief marketing officer and head of business development for Phoenix Software International, which is a very exciting place to be, if you want my personal opinion.
Okay.
So I'll stop there.
Yeah, so thank you for this introduction, and your journey is quite inspiring. And even we would like to hear more about your career. So could you please walk us through your career path? Like, what initially sparked your interest in IBM Z and the LinuxONE technology? Although you mentioned that how you started it, but could you please throw more light on it?
Yeah, well, so when I became the executive director of Share, like I said, I really didn't know. I didn't know the whole world of nonprofit existed. That's one whole nother topic. I didn't really have a clear understanding of mainframes, nor how close I was to one. But I still, even once I realized how close I was to one, I still didn't understand it fully. But the community of folks that exists within mainframe are amazing. And I walked in the door at my first Share event 6 weeks after I started my job. And I was immediately embraced by all these amazing people and couldn't believe how brilliant and smart these folks were. And I started to learn more and more about the technology. So what is Share? What's it all about? Okay, Share is basically, a nonprofit organization where its members are all, organizations that employ the mainframe. What does that mean? Right? What is the mainframe? What does it do? Where does it sit? How does it interact? And I started to learn a lot of that. And fortunately, because of my background as a developer, being in IT in various roles, but mainly as a developer on the distributed side, I wasn't completely blind to technology, right? I can code my way out of a wet paper bag and then some. But so it made it a little easier to pick up on. But I basically started just trying to absorb everything that I could all around me. And I'll say to you that not only do I find the technology, the more I still learn about it on a daily basis. Very exciting. Um, it's the people, I think, that really sparked it for me. The community that exists around the mainframe, the passion for the technology that comes from that community, is really, I think, kind of what lit the fire for me, to get me so excited. And like I said, I'm surrounded by a group of brilliant people, not just within the mainframe community as a whole, but even just within Phoenix Software. And I learn something new every day. And that for me is really exciting. And every time I learn something new where, maybe I get to actually lay my hands on the mainframe, that's even more exciting.
Yeah, yeah, you are right. Like if community is good, and if there are some people around you who inspired you and who are ready to help work with you, then your work become more interesting. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, and now, like, if I would like to ask the question for those who might not be familiar, so with this IBM Z technologies, so could you please break down what IBM Z in a simple terms or a layman term, I would say, and why does it continue to be such a vital technology, especially in the finance industry today?
Yeah, well, so unfortunately or fortunately, I end up finding myself trying to explain that to people a lot, right? When they want to understand what it is I do, and why I do it. And I think the best way to explain it to everybody is that it's just a giant computer, right? First of all, it's a giant computer, maybe about the size, a little bit bigger than your refrigerator. But what they don't realize, what most of your layman folks don't
Mm,
realize, is how instrumental it is in your day-to-day lives, in the global economy, right? And so my best example for everyone is one that we all hear all the time, and that is you walk around with a computer in your hand all day long, right?
right.
You expect to be able to take this computer that you have in your hand, and you want to be able to, within a couple of clicks, you want to book an airline ticket. You want to log into your bank account. You want to transfer money. You want to pay bills. You want to, do whatever. None of that happens without a mainframe. None of it happens without a mainframe. That machine is there because of its transaction processing power, right? The banks, those financial industries, those organizations that I dealt with in my previous life, right? Where we were doing algorithmic trading, um, you know, uh, in our customer accounts, right? Being able to trade stocks within microseconds. That happens because there's a mainframe on the other side. That machine that is just a little bit bigger than your refrigerator has that processing power. It can handle billions of transactions in real time. And we've all become accustomed to that instant gratification, right? Instantly being able to book that ticket, instantly being able to execute that stock trade. Add to that the security that comes from the platform, right? Knowing that your transactions and that your data is secure. And the financial industry relies on that, right? They rely on making sure that they're keeping your data, your transactions, your money secure. And then reliability, right? Because none of us like it when we, try to pull up something on our phone and it doesn't work. We all want it to work. You need that system back there, that system of record to be reliable and, and have the uptime, and I don't know how many people realize that the Z in IBM Z actually stands for zero downtime. You know, it's just something that in this day and age we've all become accustomed to. And if you understand that, if that's what you want, you have to understand that there's a big machine behind you making all of that happen.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the best example you have shared with all the audience, because yeah, you can relate it with mobile phones, like whatever the transaction is happening around the world. So, and especially those who are related to the financial things. So yeah, these are the one of the best example that I think people can easily understand, especially those who are new to this particular domain, so they can have some idea about this. And I also saw that you have been involved with IBM's Master the Mainframe program. So could you please tell a bit about this program, and how has this experience influenced your understanding of mainframe technology and the real world applications?
Yeah, so I was involved in when I was part of Share. I worked a lot with Meredith Stoll and Chrissy Schroeder and some other folks who are at IBM with their academic initiatives, and so we would do a lot of master the mainframe type stuff, pulling things together at events, hackathons, student career days, bringing students in. When I left Share and I joined the Phoenix software team, I got that much closer to the mainframe, right? And so while I was at Share, I learned a lot, and I mean a lot, from a lot of really brilliant people. I literally got a giant step closer to a mainframe. So, to the point where I could actually touch one, right? And that was the point at which I thought, okay, all bets are off. I have to learn as much as I possibly can. And so I decided it was just within a couple of months of starting my position at Phoenix Software, I decided to take some online courses. And I also decided I took some online courses through Open HPI out of Germany. They had some great courses that I was able to take online. And then I decided to, you know, try my hand at master the mainframe. Now, obviously, I can't compete, right? Because I'm not a student. I'm a little older than that.
Right.
Um, but you could still do master the mainframe. And so I, over the course of a weekend, I did all 3 levels of master the mainframe on my own. I learned a ton. I only struggled at one point, and it was the point at which you had to do something with assembler. And I actually work with a gentleman by the name of Ed Jaffe, who's an amazing assembler programmer. And I got this close to phoning a friend to say, I don't understand this. Can you help me? And then I thought, no, I'm going to do it. And I figured it out, and I got through it on my own. And I was very proud of that. And I got earned all 3 badges. And I will say that it was a great experience, even though you're not a student. So, it's not called Master the Mainframe anymore. It's called, I think, Z Explorer. But it's still a challenge-based process. One of the things I heard when I finished it was that I was one of the fastest people to get through all
Okay.
3 levels um, successfully. And it was just, even though you can't compete, it's still a good learning opportunity. You literally get to lay hands on, you literally get to go through and try the challenges. And I learned so much from that. And then I could turn around and at least have an inkling, right? When I was having a conversation with my peers in the office, and we were talking about, and they were educating me on the products that Phoenix Software has and has developed. I wasn't completely blind. I didn't completely I didn't come from total ground zero, if you will. I had a little bit of a better understanding of kind of how that all tied together. So I would highly recommend it to just anyone. It doesn't have to be a competition. Just look at it from the perspective of challenging yourself.
Right. Yeah. So is there any specific criteria for this particular course, or is this only for students, or anyone can join this?
Anyone can join it. It's like I said, I think it's called Z Explorer now. But yeah, but it's definitely just challenge based. And even back when it was Master the Mainframe, they had 2 different tracks. They had they had the true student track, which was a competition, right? And there was a winner awarded at the end that was based on not only how well you did through the first 2.5 levels, but had to do with a project that you had to do at the end of level 3, right? And so they took each person's project that they did at the end of level 3, and that's I believe how they selected winners, right? And then those winners actually got awards. They didn't just get the badges. Everybody who finished got the badges, but the actual winners, they got things, they got physical things. Some of them got like, iPads and things like that. There were some that had trips sponsored to Poughkeepsie. There were multiple times when those folks were brought to, like, let's say a share event. IBM would bring them to the share event. They would actually put them up on the stage and congratulate them up on the main stage. But then those students also then had the opportunity to immerse themselves in the technical sessions at share. Now, the other side of it was that even if you weren't a student, they did have a separate track where you could go through it as a non-student in a non-competition way, but still do the exact same work. You just didn't get mingled in with the students. And that's what I did. And so at this point, I believe the same process still exists through Z Explorer, where regardless if you're going to compete, if you're a student, you're going to compete, you can still compete. And if you're not a student, you can still go through it and earn all the badges and the certifications.
Yeah, I agree. Like this is one of the best opportunities, especially for those who wanted to pursue their career in mainframe. They can complete those challenges and they can learn the new things by exploring all those stuffs. And nowadays, they can simply reach out to the experts through LinkedIn, and there is very large communities who are ready to help, who are
Oh, yeah.
ready to provide guidance. So yeah, this is one of the best opportunity they have.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. Okay, and now I would like to ask a bit about your IBM championship achievement. So, as an IBM champion, you must have a unique perspective on Zowe, the Zowe technology. So, how do you see it contributing to the modernization and the streamlining of application development on the mainframe?
Yeah, well, so I have actually a long history with Zowe from back when it started. I was actually Share's executive director at the
Mhm.
time when the Open Mainframe project actually joined Share as a member organization. And then subsequently in 2018, I was still their executive director when they made the big announcement and they launched Zowe. So I was there during that part of the process. Now I left Share shortly after that and I joined Phoenix Software. And one of the things that I am fairly proud of is the fact that Phoenix Software has gotten as involved in the Zowe project as they have. And that's because Phoenix actually has a long history of, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, a long history of taking advantage of and leveraging the most recent technology that's available out there. And so we took a look at Zowe and said, well, of course, this is part of that trend, right? So let's take a look at it. And our EJAS product actually fit nicely right into Zowe. And so um, we moved forward with that. But if I back up a little bit and actually, think about the question that you actually asked, which is about the modernization and streamlining, I think the important thing about Zowe is that it's the next evolution of open source, if you will. There are a lot of people who will argue with you that open source is not new. And in fact, open source is rooted in the mainframe. If you look back over the 60 years that the mainframe has been around, it's all been about open source. It's all been about organizations collaborating together and sharing code and working together to help solve each other's problems. You look at the CBT tape, you look at, there's a million examples out there what how open source started. It may be in a different place right now, but that's because everything evolves, right? People evolve, technology evolves. If we think about it, every generation that comes along evolves in some manner, especially when it comes to technology, right? So when I was young, we didn't have these. If I wanted to talk to somebody, I went to the phone that was plugged into the wall and I dialed a number that I either memorized or I had written down to speak to somebody. Or I wrote them a letter and I put it in the mail. Or I got on my bike or I went into my car and I drove to their house or
Okay.
wherever they were to speak to them. My children, on the other hand, grew up with these, right? So they grew up texting and doing all of those things, right? So
Right.
if I looked at them and said, you have to use that phone that's on the wall, or you have to sit down and write a letter, pen and paper to someone, they would look at me like I was crazy. And
Yeah.
that's because they've evolved, right?
Right.
They grew up with different technology than what I grew up with. And the same is true for the next generation of mainframers, right? That next generation of mainframers are coming out of school having learned how to use tools that are very different in the way that they look, in the way that they feel, in the way that they interact than the older generation of mainframers are used to, right? So
Right.
the newer generation of mainframers don't want to look at a TN3270 screen, right? They want a graphical user interface. They want what they know, what they've become accustomed to, what evolution has put in front of them as this is the current thing, right? And so
Right.
Zowe plays right into that because Zowe helps by putting a face on top of the APIs and all of the things that are available on the mainframe, right? Through ZOSMF, you can get to the APIs, and Zowe is a face on top of that. And it gives that younger generation the ability to work with the technology, but do so in a way that they're comfortable with. So,
Okay.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's clear now. Okay. So yeah, now can you discuss some of the success story, or I would say the use cases of how IBM technology has been instrumental in driving innovation and efficiency within the asset management industry specifically?
Yeah. So, again, we talked about it earlier. It's the transaction processing power, and it's the security and the reliability of the mainframe that really is key for the financial industry. You need to be able to process those transactions. If you think about, where my area of expertise lies in the financial industry, it has to do with trading, right? Has to do with trading stocks and bonds. You need that millisecond, that microsecond return, right? You
Right.
can't, the market's not going to sit and wait for you, right? I can't tell you how many times I had, traders in my face yelling at me saying, my order won't go through and the stock market's not going to wait for me. I need to get my order through. And that can't happen. You can't have that kind of real-time trading going back and forth unless you have that transaction processing power behind it. And and I'm sorry, but it just can't be achieved on a Windows box, right?
Yeah.
You just can't. You can say whatever you want. You can, there are people out there I'm sure are very passionate about that side, who will have nasty things to say because I said that. But the reality is that there's nothing that beats it. There really isn't. And so, when you look at the technology, you look at the implementation of that technology and what it's trying to achieve, right? And then if you try and talk about use cases and success stories, I think use cases and success stories come from collaboration, right? Really smart people coming together and collaborating. Those are really smart people at IBM. Those are really smart people at your customer sites. Those are really smart people at your ISVs. Coming together and understanding what an organization's strategic goals are, and then figuring out what's the best technology, what's the best implementation of that technology, and how do we get you from A to Z with all of that so that you're able to achieve your goals. So,
Yeah, collaboration is something that is very that is playing very essential role for the community. Okay, and like you have a proven track record in strategic planning, I would say. So, can you walk us through your approach to the strategic planning and what factors you consider most important for a successful execution of any plan?
absolutely. So, strategic planning can be really simple or it can be really complex.
Hmm.
Sometimes it depends on the size of your organization, right? So if you have a very large organization with a lot of different business units, the strategic planning is only successful if it starts at the top, right?
Right.
The organization as a whole has to set out some very high level strategic goals for the organization, but they have to be goals that can be translated down, right? Because all of your business units, they're the ones that are going to help you achieve those goals. And for that to work, each of those business units has to have their own strategic plan, and their own strategic plan has to be able to roll up to the organization's strategic goals. Now, in a large organization, a lot of times your IT and your business operations folks, their strategic plan gets super complex, right? It'll get super complex because not only will they have their own goals that they need to achieve to roll up properly to the organization's goals, but they have to support other business units as well, right? Especially IT, but operations comes into that quite a bit as well too. Um, the IT organization can have its own set of goals that roll up directly to a business goal, but then they can have a whole nother set of goals that is to help operations or marketing or sales or accounting or whatever other business unit within the organization achieve their goals that then roll up to the organization. So see, it gets all messy, right?
Yes, right.
Um, it gets very messy. And so it's important for all of those folks to be brought together, all your key players from within all those business units to come together and to understand first that high level, and then to help work with mapping that down so that it flows down, but then turns around and flows back up appropriately. The only way that can happen is with communication,
Yes.
right? Communication and collaboration. Again, I'm going to use that word collaboration. You can't have an organization at the top say, these are our strategic goals, and then just walk away, right? And expect the rest of the organization to figure out how to hit them. So the only way that that can work and the only way anybody will be successful is if everybody understands what the goals are, why they are, and how you're going to work together to get there. And so communication and collaboration to me is the biggest thing for success.
Yeah, I completely agree with this point, like collaboration point, because you are dealing with multiple domain, right? There are multiple domain who are working together in order to achieve some goals. So if you are not communicating properly throughout the team, then it might be not that much of easier to achieve the goals and to execute any set of tasks. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and now, like as we know that you are leading this technology from a long time, so what advice would you like to give someone looking to become a leader in the technology, or I would say the financial service industry? So, what all advice are there from your end?
Yeah, I think, to become a leader, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. I think
Hmm.
if you want to be a leader, the one of the first things that you have to do is you have to know yourself,
Right,
right? You have to be able to embrace your own strengths and your own weaknesses
right.
and be comfortable with them. And then a good leader is someone who's not actually afraid to surround themselves with people who are smarter than they are, especially people who are who are stronger where you're weak, right? So it's really important to not be afraid to surround yourself with those smarter people, but then you also have to empower them and you have to listen to them. You have to encourage them to participate. You have to give them the space and the safety to share and to contribute. And then you have to learn when it's good to lead from the front versus leading from the back, right? Sometimes it's more appropriate to be out front, but most times it's actually more appropriate to be behind, right? Leading from behind. Let those people shine. Let them do what they do best. And that's the other thing. Not only are you embracing what your own self and what your strengths and weaknesses are, but you should know the strengths and weaknesses of everyone on your team, right?
Right.
Because then you can focus them on doing what they do best and help them and shore them up when they need to be shored up, whether that's yourself or with someone else. And so to be a leader, I think you have to be able to do that. And then I also think occasionally you have to be willing to roll your sleeves up and show that you're willing to get dirty.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like although there are many topics on which we can discuss and we can talk here, but just because of the limitation of time, I would like to
Mhm.
put up my last question. So, could you please tell your experience participating with the Open Mainframe project as a program committee member for the Open Mainframe Summit, member of the marketing committee, and now currently marketing committee chair. So, it highlights your commitment to open source within the mainframe space. So, can you discuss the importance of open source for the future of the mainframe?
Absolutely. Like I said earlier, um, Phoenix Software has always had taken a role in leveraging the latest technology when it comes out. As I said earlier, we took a look at Zowe, we took a look at the Open Mainframe project, and we decided that was again another piece of leveraging current technology that we wanted to be involved in. We wanted to bring it out to our customers. And so when I joined Phoenix Software, I re-involved myself with the Open Mainframe project. Phoenix became a silver member of the Linux Foundation, which afforded me the opportunity to represent Phoenix as part of the marketing committee for the Open Mainframe project. They twisted my arm this year and got me to be the chair of the committee, but I've been on the committee for the last several years. And it allows me to not only help keep Phoenix involved, but it keeps us at the forefront of understanding like what's going on, right? What's with Zowe, where's it going? But also allows us to have a voice, right? We have a voice within that community. I get to help promote it. I get to help promote our involvement in it. Phoenix was actually something we like to call the first fourth. For Zowe. If you know anything about Zowe and how it was launched in 2018, it was launched with the three founding members, which were IBM, Broadcom, and Rocket Software. And Phoenix was the first non-founding member to actually have a Zowe interface, our Zowe CLI. So we call ourselves the first fourth.
Okay.
And so, and then since then we have, because we do think it is so important, right? If you look at the direction that IBM's going with ZOSMF, for example, and Zowe actually leverages ZOSMF because, like I said, Zowe is accessing the APIs through ZOSMF. We know that that's the direction everyone's going. So we actually are one of only two vendors out there that actually have an interface with Zowe in all three categories. So we have a CLI command line interface. We have the API mediation layer interface. And then we also have a Zowe framework interface, which is our eJust web app on the Zowe desktop. And
Okay.
there's only one other organization that has all three categories for one of their products. So
Okay.
it's important.
Yeah, it's important. Okay. So yeah, thank you so much, Donna, for joining us today and for sharing such a wonderful example to clarify the things easily. I think those who are not even started their career in this mainframe technology, they have some idea like what we are talking about and how they can pursue their career. So thank you once again for joining and for sharing your expertise with us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.